Greetings, everyone. I want to talk with you about the upcoming new moon annular solar eclipse on October 14th. We're moving into this eclipse cycle this month with this annular solar eclipse on the 14th, and then we will have, at the time of the full moon on October 28th, a partial lunar eclipse. From my perspective, eclipses are wake-up calls. They are out of the ordinary. They are calling our attention to bring something into conscious awareness, to take time to look at our lives and where we may be out of balance. What are we needing to see? What are we needing to bring into conscious awareness in order to come back into more right balance, right harmony, right alignment with our soul selves? I see solar eclipses as a time where there may be an event or we may have some experience that activates that insight that is trying to give us a message as to how we're meant to change or come back into balance. And I see lunar eclipses as operating more on an emotional level to try to guide us into looking at something that may be in the shadow aspect of ourselves or in our unconscious awareness, again, that's needing to be brought into the light of consciousness. But let's look at the energies of this upcoming new moon and solar eclipse to see what the message is in terms of what we're meant to work with individually and collectively. So here is the chart of this new moon that here on the East Coast in the United States will be at 1:55 p.m. on October 14th. And you can see that the time of this new moon and eclipse, the sun and moon will be conjunct at 21 degrees of Libra. It's interesting that the Sabian symbol, in other words, the meaning of that degree of the zodiac, is about surrendering self-importance, surrendering our ego to express compassion. Hold that awareness as we talk more in depth about this, the energies of this solar eclipse. Surrendering our ego, our self-importance, in order to be expressing compassion. The energies at the time of this new moon and solar eclipse are very powerful. We are still in this incredible square, Pluto and Capricorn squaring the lunar nodes, and that will be continuing through the end of the year. And remember, this is an ongoing theme about the karmic choice point that we're in individually and collectively. Are we deconstructing the systems, structures, and forms of the past that need to be let go of in order for us, South Node in Libra, to come back into balance and harmony and right relationship with ourselves and each other, in order to move into new forms of self-expression, new ways of being, a more balanced expression of the energy of Aries. And Eris Zenith is conjunct the North Node and is guiding us to be open to creative new ways of being. Remember, this is the planet that is 44 degrees off the ecliptic, supporting us in stepping out of conventional ways of thinking, acting, and being, to tune in to our hearts, to our inner guidance, to follow our own creative spiritual path. So this is the undercurrent that's continuing as we move through these eclipses and continue through to the end of the year. I think it's highly significant that Pluto is now squaring the sun and moon at the time of this eclipse. So it's ramping up our awareness that this is a time of transformation, a time when we need to look at our sense of identity, look at how we're dealing with things emotionally, to be in a process of coming into more right balance, right harmony. And what does that mean? I think that it's critical in this time that we be gaining more awareness of how we have been caught in patterns individually and collectively that are destructive, that are harmful to ourselves, to each other, to the earth. That Pluto squaring the lunar nodes is supporting us in looking at how we have gotten out of right balance, right harmony, and how we can move in new directions. And it's particularly powerful that Pluto has been retrograde, and it goes stationary on October 10th, and then it goes direct on October 11th. So Pluto has just been direct a few days. So it's moving out of its phase of being retrograde, where it is about how are we reflecting, reviewing our forms and systems and structures to see what we need to change. And now as it moves into going direct, it's calling us into action to follow through with those ways that we are transforming our systems, our structures, our patterns, our paradigms to move in these new directions. It's also very powerful that Pluto has been in a square with Mars. Mars has been in Libra, and they went into a square with a 5-degree orb beginning September 30th, and then went into an exact square on October 8th. Mars then has moved into Scorpio by October 12th, but will continue to be in an out of sign square with Pluto until October 15th. So I see this period of time between September 30th and October 15th as a very powerful time in terms of these energies of Pluto squaring Mars. When I see Pluto square Mars in a birth chart, to me, it's often a signal of some kind of experience of trauma. Pluto, that planet of transformation and power and often abuse of power, and Mars, how that's expressed in action. So part of what we need to be aware of as we're working these energies of the eclipse is that energy with Mars is very strong during this time. And when Pluto is squaring Mars, the shadow aspect of that can be violence, destruction, outbreak of war, some abuse of power. We are seeing these hotspots around the world where there's violence or war. We're seeing that in Russia and Ukraine, the Middle East, Sudan. Different parts of the world are in turmoil and are hotspots for abuse of power, violence, destruction. I think this intensifies as Mars moves into Scorpio. Remember that Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio. And this can mean abusive action, war, violence. Mars in Scorpio is also calling us to look, Scorpio, at those shadow aspects of how we work with Mars energy. And Pluto squaring Mars at its best is saying, reflect on your actions, and how are your actions coming out of trauma? How are your actions coming out of your unconscious in a reactive way, in a violent way, out of fear or conflict or abuse of power? So at the time of this solar eclipse, I think part of this wake-up call is we need to look individually and collectively at our actions and how are we working with that Mars energy? And are we working with it in a way that is coming from a balanced place, coming from a heart-centered place of acting in compassion? Remember the theme of this solar eclipse, expressing compassion versus acting out of our trauma or acting out of abuse of power. So this square is really powerful between September 30th and October 15th. And I think we will see both the shadow aspects of that playing out in the world. But remember, we have a choice how we work with these energies. And the more of us that are working that square in a conscious way, the more we can impact how that manifests in the world and in the collective consciousness. Remember also that it's important to look at the type of square between Pluto and Mars. This is a third quarter square. If you're looking at what phase that square is in the cycle between two planets, you start with orienting yourself at the slower moving planet, in this case Pluto, and then you move around the wheel, going through the signs in order till you get to the other planet. And that gives you a sense of where in that synodic cycle of Pluto and Mars this square is occurring. And so given that it's 3/4 of the way through its cycle, this is a third quarter square between Pluto and Mars. What does that mean? The third quarter square is called a crisis in consciousness. The first square is a crisis in action. How are we working this Pluto-Mars energy and bringing it into expression? The third quarter square, in being a crisis of consciousness, is calling us to reflect on how are we looking at this cycle that we've been in, looking at the ways in which we've been expressing that Mars-Pluto energetic. And how are we needing to see what's been helpful in that process, what's been destructive? How are we integrating our understanding of that in order to gain more wisdom and integrate the lessons of this cycle? Remember that the Mars cycle is a 2-year cycle. So in its journey in this cycle with Pluto, it was conjunct Pluto the beginning of March 2022 at 21 degrees of Capricorn. So think about this time frame for yourself in terms of your own exploration and experience of these Pluto-Mars energy in your own life. So March 2nd, 2022, they were conjunct at 21 degrees of Capricorn. The first square with Pluto and Mars was July 1st of 2022, and now we're in the third square. So again, it's a time for reflection, reassessing how we use power, how we act, how we get caught in reaction or trauma responses, or ways in which we're acting out of our own unresolved issues in ways that are harmful or destructive to ourselves or others. So this is an important time to be reflecting on that and bringing into conscious awareness what may be hidden in the shadows, what may be pushed into your unconscious. Be tuned into ways that you're reactive or acting out in ways that are out of balance. The other aspects that are important in this solar eclipse are the sun and moon are conjunct Mercury and Pallas Athene, supporting us in tuning in and thinking in more creative, intuitive ways, particularly with that influence of Pallas Athene. And again, with the opposition with Chiron, we're being supported in healing our sense of self, Aries, healing in terms of how we handle that Aries Mars energy. And as I said in an earlier video, I think we are very much collectively in a period of time where we're being called to heal the unresolved issues from the age of Aries, when we moved into this paradigm of power over, of the dominator paradigm, and that it's time to heal, time to release that. Interestingly enough, in the chart of the United States right now, not only has the country been in its Pluto return, but also moving into its Chiron return. So different parts of the world, but especially the United States, is being called now to heal, look at ways in which we are out of balance with our values, with our purpose, with our deeper identity, and come into a way that we heal the misuse of power and misuse of our actions in the world. But all of us are being called into this time to wake up and look at how we act, how we express ourselves, and is it coming from balance or is it coming from a destructive place? I also think it's significant that the sun and moon are in a yod with Neptune and Uranus, again, guiding us in these other ways of knowing, to be tuning into compassion, to be gaining insight and coming into clarity about how our actions are in right justice, right harmony with the earth, Taurus, or out of balance. So there are a lot of energies in this solar eclipse supporting us in how to move out of destructive patterns and into more balance and harmony. It's also beautiful that Mars is sextiling Venus at the time of this eclipse, again, supporting us in integrating the energy of Mars and Venus, of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, reminding us of this larger process that we're in with the lunar nodes about balancing the Libra Aries energy, Venus, Mars, sacred masculine, sacred feminine, how we're expressing ourselves from a place of harmony and balance, not disharmony, power over, and imbalance. As I said in my earlier video, the astrological overview, which I highly recommend that you see if you haven't, I truly believe that part of what this solar eclipse is calling into our awareness is that we need to be reflecting on the paradigms of the patriarchal period, reflecting on the ways that we've carried out of balance energies from the age of Aries that are still shaping how we are in our collective consciousness. And I do believe that these patterns are a trauma response. It's, if you look at what is going on in the world right now and the dangers that we're in with how we're interacting with the environment, with how we're increasing our weaponry and have the capacity with nuclear weapons to destroy each other and destroy the globe. Why would we do that as humanity? But we're so locked into this trauma paradigm of the need for power in order to have an illusion of security and sense of control and sense of safety, that we actually risk annihilating each other and destroying the planet in our effort to be protecting ourselves. It truly is coming from a place of trauma and fear. And we need to heal that and step out of that trauma pattern in order to move into these new paradigms that are allowing us to act and make decisions from a place of balance and harmony, not power over, destruction, reactivity, and violence. When I do trauma work, one of the things we talk about a lot is the importance of the witness self. When we have that capacity to step back and reflect on our actions, reflect on our emotions, reflect on our behavior, then we have the chance to make a conscious choice. Is this healthy for me? Is this helpful? Or is this harmful? Am I caught in reactivity and trauma or ways I've coped with patterns from the past? Or am I coming from my true self? Am I coming from a more balanced, centered place? Am I coming from the heart? When we can step back and be in the witness self, then we can also align more fully with our soul selves that are able to guide us from that place of higher consciousness to be making choices that are fostering our growing in love and wisdom and supporting others and being of service to others and expressing compassion from the heart. Remember that when we really integrate that energy of Mars and Pluto at their deeper archetypal meanings, Mars, the expression of our actions, our behavior, our decisions, is meant to be in alignment with Pluto, the higher octave of Mars, which is about how are we aligning our will with divine will? How are we aligning our actions with our soul selves that are in alignment with cosmic consciousness? This is some of the wake-up call of this solar eclipse. Are your actions in alignment with your soul self? Are your actions in alignment with the earth and sky and cosmic consciousness? Or are your actions coming from a place of ego, longing for power over, or coming out of fear, reactivity, a trauma response? As we look at some of the other planetary bodies that come into play with this eclipse, there is support for us in healing and moving into these new paradigms and more balanced ways of working with our energies and our self-expression. Let me show you. I truly believe that some of the asteroids from the asteroid belt are helping us heal by helping us reclaim lost parts of ourselves. Remember, that asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter is probably the result of planets that collided or exploded. And so we're seeing the fragments in this asteroid belt. And the Kuiper belt objects, which are further out, have a lot of archetypal energy reminding us of our origins. Again, trying to give us that larger perspective, that witness self that can help us see our larger journey to be more conscious of where we are now, of what we're meant to learn, and how we're meant to evolve and grow in love and wisdom individually and collectively. So let's look at just a few key points at the time of this solar eclipse. It's very significant that Haumea is still in a powerful configuration close to the south node, but now very much in a strong conjunction with Mars. Remember, Haumea is that fertility goddess who knew how to reinvent herself to be in that generative, creative energy of new life, of new creative expression. She is trying to support us in looking at how we're working with that Mars to be an energy of regeneration, an energy of being of service, an energy that is life-giving rather than destructive and about death, power over, violence. I also think it's highly significant that the asteroid Isis is conjunct the south node and very much in conjunction with the sun and moon at the time of this eclipse. Remember, Isis is that archetype coming out of ancient Egyptian mythology, but remember, Isis then, when Christianity became dominant in much of the world, Isis morphed into Mother Mary. So Isis actually, in all cultures, we see her in Kuan Yin, we see her energies in other great mother goddesses throughout mythology around the world. Isis is that great mother who loves us, heals us, restores us, revives us, resurrects us. Isis in the mythology of Isis and Osiris was the great goddess who, when Osiris is killed and torn into pieces in the competition and jealousy that he experienced from his brother, she revives Osiris. She heals him. She pieces him back together again. She makes him whole. she resurrects him. This is the great mother that we can call on when we feel assaulted, when we feel traumatized, when we feel torn apart, when we've lost aspects of ourselves. Call on Isis to heal you, restore you, bring those lost parts of you back to you to make you whole again. She is powerfully present at the time of this eclipse, saying we have access to that energy of the great mother, the source, the creative energies of the cosmos to help us heal, come back into our witness selves, come back into alignment with our soul selves, to move into whole new paradigms and ways of being and ways of acting and ways of expressing ourselves. And again, the theme for this new moon solar eclipse is surrendering our ego and coming into the expression of compassion, coming into right relationship. It's also significant that where the star Sirius, our binary star, and very much also associated with the energy of Isis, comes into connection with our ecliptic at 14 degrees of Cancer, meaning she is squaring the sun and moon at the time of this eclipse. The energy of Isis is powerfully present at the time of this eclipse. I want to reiterate again how we deal with the energies of these profound times. It's not the energies of these transits, of these eclipses, are not predictive or deterministic. They're guiding us in our own journeys of evolution and growth. And we choose how we interact with them and therefore how they manifest in us and through us. So as I've been describing, we can play out the shadow side of these energies, and particularly the Pluto-Mars square, or we can drop into the deeper message and meaning and energies of this profound solar eclipse and wake up and heal and move into more wholeness, into more connection with our hearts and our soul selves, and into new, radically new ways of being. Let me show you where these energies are in the sky at the time of this solar eclipse. And again, I think the visual astrology, where the sun and moon and planets actually are in the sky at these profound times, is giving us a sense of their deeper spiritual energy. What is the deeper intent that's coming through in those energies, coming to us through the stars to impact us here on Earth? And then how we can manifest them comes through in the chart of the tropical zodiac, which is more connected to our seasonal cycle and how we are experiencing our lives on the Earth plane. But in the sky, at the time of this solar eclipse, the sun and moon are conjunct the bright star Spica in the constellation of Virgo, and Mercury and Mars are close by. Spica is that bright star in the constellation of Virgo that is the sheaf of wheat in the hand of the harvest goddess. Spica represents the way in which we, like the harvest goddess, who uses discernment to separate the wheat from the chaff and then offer the fruits of the harvest to be of service, to be nurturing and healing to others. When we're connecting with the energies of this new moon, conjunct Spica, we are tuning into our own gifts and how we can be of service in the world. Again, helping shape how we act, Mars, how we think, how we are expressing ourselves. Again, this supports are expressing ourselves from our hearts with compassion to be of service to others, rather than coming from a place of ego or reactivity that results in power over or violence or destruction or causing harm. At the time of this new moon and eclipse, Venus is close to the royal star Regulus, supporting us in how we relate to others in coming from the heart with courage. I also think it's significant that both Jupiter and Uranus at this time are in that powerful part of the sky that I've talked about frequently in past videos, called In the Stair of Cetus, where you have Perseus the warrior, you have Cetus the whale, you have Andromeda. This is the story coming out of Greek mythology that is about polarization and the way in which we get caught in the conflict between the energies of power over, the dominator model, and the energies of the sacred feminine. And Uranus and Jupiter are saying, wake up, see the truth, step out of that polarization between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, between each other. Jupiter is guiding us to have faith that we can see each other in our diversity. We can reintegrate the energies of the sacred and masculine and sacred feminine to come back into balance. This is a profound time, and many of us, I know, are feeling the intensification, the acceleration of the energies in this time, and the intensification of the polarization on the planet. It can feel like we live in different realities from each other, that the consensual reality seems more and more fraught, more and more caught in violence, chaos, power over, competition, corruption, destruction. And yet so many of us are experiencing an accelerated process of awakening, of transformation, of healing, of seeing and glimpsing and feeling these new paradigms that we're capable of moving into with the Aquarian age, that are about compassion, collaboration, coming back in to harmony, balance, right relationship. This is what we're capable of. This is what these energies are supporting us and guiding us to move into. So as you experience this solar eclipse, this beautiful annular eclipse wake-up call, let it be a time for you of reflecting on where you are in your own process. Let it be a time that you strengthen your connection with your witness self, to reflect on how are you acting, how are you expressing yourself in the world, and is it coming from ego? Is it coming from woundedness? Is it coming from reactivity? Is it coming from shadow aspects of yourself? Or are you stepping more and more into that witness self part of you, to be in alignment with your soul self, to let your actions come from the heart, be an expression of compassion, and be a part of what those of us who are forming this healing web around the globe are doing in collaborating to co-create new ways of being, new paradigms, to move into a new world that is in balance and harmony and right relationship. This is a profound time, an intense time, but an extraordinary opportunity for those of us who've chosen to incarnate in this time to help midwife this new world into being, to hold that larger perspective and awareness of this journey that we're in collectively into a new consciousness, into the age of Aquarius, and a time where we can move into a heightened consciousness, creativity, and ways that we are living once again from balance, harmony, love, and a sense of oneness with all that is. Let us continue to support each other in that. Let us continue to hold that awareness of what this larger journey is that we're in together, so that we hold that hope, that higher frequency and vibration come from our hearts to express compassion, to be of service, and to support those who are struggling in this intense time. Because as we hold that energy of love and higher consciousness, we have the capacity to help that shift in the collective consciousness so that we all can heal and awaken and move into this new world together. Blessed be.